Two cars, about the same size. They occupy the segment C category. That's the same as a Golf or a Ford Focus. Okay, this is an estate, but they both weigh about the same. This is 1,440 kilos, and Toyota say this is between 1,400 kilos and 1,480 kilos. It depends on what equipment you have. I'm guessing this is about the same though, given what options it has and doesn't have. But this one, Euro 5 emissions standard compliant diesel. This is Toyota's latest full self-charging hybrid tech, their 5th generation, and it complies with Euro 6 emission standards. Okay, emission standards are different to economy, but what about economy? What are they like on fuel and how do they compare? Let's find out. I'm starting in the Citroen with a 1.6 turbo diesel. I've got 3 routes planned, one in the city, one at 70 miles an hour and one on country roads. But this test is going to be even more interesting than just comparing this diesel with the hybrid, because I'm actually going to be comparing this diesel with this diesel, because last week, albeit it's 6 weeks ago for you because of how my scheduling works, I compared this diesel with that petrol. The trouble is, the engine was already up to temperature, but this time I have the opportunity to perform a cold start. During this test, both cars are going to be started from cold. And if you're wondering how I just shot that intro with the cars together, well, I haven't filmed that yet. I'm going to film that after I've done the drives because I don't want to waste the cold start. So we're not only going to find out how this diesel compares to the hybrid, but we're going to find out how this diesel is affected by a cold start compared to last week when I started from warm. I'm doing the exact same routes. Okay, so seatbelt on. I only get one shot at this, so if I mince my words, I have to stick with it and leave it in the edit because I only really get one cold start. When I used to tune mine, set up my old car, which didn't have a factory ECU, I had to wait like a whole night before the engine was truly cold. It takes a while for the engine to go back to cold. So once it's started, it's going to be many hours before I get this opportunity again. So here goes. Engine on. Automatic. Trip computer reset. We're off. What's that? Oh, people are already writing in the comments that I started the engine and got going straight away without letting the engine heat up. Well, modern engines are designed to do that. In fact, letting the engine fully heat up is probably bad because you can get cylinder wash. Not so sure if that's the case with a diesel, but it is true with a petrol. I usually start the engine and wait 10 seconds just to play it safe, just to let the fluid circulate, but I certainly don't let it heat fully up. And for this test, I want to try and reduce the variables. So instead of trying to wait a guesstimated amount of time, I'm starting the engine and getting going straight away. But I will be driving gently. I'm not driving it hard, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'm not trying to drive economically, and I'm not trying to drive like I'm using more fuel, like fast. I just want to be as consistent as possible. I'm leaving the stop-start system switched on in this car. It's a good system. It's a micro hybrid with a reversible alternator that starts the engine in 0.4 seconds. It's smooth and there's always power available. I'm going to leave it in automatic mode and let it decide what gear it thinks is best. This is actually my other half's car and the hybrid replaces it. It's actually up for sale at the moment, but by the time you see this video, this car hopefully has been sold because, well, I put up for sale a week ago. You're going to see this video in 6 weeks. So if someone hasn't bought it yet, then I'm probably asking too much money for it. I believe this route is 16 miles long from memory, and the plan is to go right and take the 20, but I'm not going to do that because last time I made the wrong turn when I did the test last week. So I'm going to do the wrong turn this week and keep the routes exactly the same so I can compare how this fuel economy is when it's cold and when it's warm. At the moment, 44.1 miles per gallon, having completed 2 miles. I'm 3 miles in and it's 43.4 miles per gallon. I'm going to keep the routes exactly the same as I did last week because I am interested in seeing how a cold start affects this diesel. As engines warm up, they do use more fuel. So I'm expecting the fuel economy on this run to be quite a bit worse than last week, although by the time I get to the 70-mile-an-hour road and the country roads, the engine will be up to temperature, so they should be similar. But it is a slightly cooler day today, 21 degrees. I can't remember what it was last week, but I'll put it on screen. In both cars, I'm going to leave the climate control on auto, air conditioning on, and at 20 degrees Celsius. Having said that about letting the engine heat up, my Mazda MX-5, in the owner's manual, it does specify that I should wait 10 seconds after a cold start before driving it. But that is a bit of an exception when it comes to modern engines. When you start that thing from cold, it sounds horrific. And if you try to drive it straight away, well, it's not easy, it's very jerky. And that's because the computer is prioritizing heating up the catalytic converter as quickly as possible to bring down emissions. I will warn you though, I know a lot less about diesel engines than I do about petrol engines. I've spent a lot of time and money tweaking and messing about with petrols, but literally no time or money messing about with diesel engines. When I've owned a diesel car, it's just been a workhorse, not a hobby. Coming to the end of the city run, 16 miles in, I'll put on screen now what the results are. I don't know the results yet because I'm not finished, but I'll put it on screen so you have more time to digest them. Also, I'll put on screen what I got last time when the car was started from warm. This time it was a cold start. I'm pretty sure it's going to be worse this time. We'll see. Let's find somewhere to park. Hopefully I can pull over just after this van on the left. Yep, looks like there's a space. That's handy. And let's go up to the car, so there's space behind for a car behind me. 55.3 miles per gallon. That's not as good as last time when the engine was already warm. See, the cold start does make a difference. I think I got over 60 last time. Right, now for 70 miles an hour on the dual carriageway. I've literally had to drive about 30 seconds to get to this dual carriageway route. The city drive finishes next to the dual carriageway. Now I can accelerate up to 70 miles per hour. I'm going to try and stay at 70 as much as I can. At this time of day I should be able to. I've timed it so that I'm going to be driving when traffic is similar in both this diesel and the hybrid. This car has a 60 litre fuel tank, and generally we typically get in the 600s out of it per tank, 600 and something miles. But on a long run it gets into the 800s. The hybrid, we've only done one tank, and that was around about 400 miles. What did surprise me though was how accurate the trip computer was. It said we had got 61.1 miles per gallon for that tank, yet we'd actually got 61.2. That's pretty much spot on. I'm not sure if I did something wrong. We've only had the car for one tank of fuel so far, but I'll keep doing that test and find out if that is usually the case. I don't know why I do the test. I'm always doing it to all cars I have. It does surprise me what knowledge I crave sometimes. I'm sure there's more interesting things in the world that I could be looking into, but turns out I'm interested in cars, and one of those things is fuel economy. At the moment we have an elephant race up ahead, so I'm not able to do 70, but hopefully when the lorry has finished passing the other lorry, I'll be able to get up to speed. I'm in the left lane now because I'm about to leave this 70 mile an hour road. I'm not finished yet though. I'll turn around at the roundabout and come back again to get more miles. So far I've done 14 miles and it's 62.7 miles per gallon. I haven't been able to do 70 as much as I would have liked, but it's fairly typical for these kinds of roads. I was probably doing 70 for about a third of it, and if I wasn't doing 70, I was doing usually between 60 and 65. A common comment I get on these videos is the fact that I rely on the trip computer, and that's not accurate. This one overreads by 7%. They are all a little bit different. Most do tend to overread a little bit, but I can't do the fill tank method because I'm only using about 3 litres of fuel, and when you fill the tank up with fuel, when it clicks off, it usually clicks off within about half a litre of accuracy. So half a litre out of 3 litres Well, that is quite a lot, and I'm better off relying on the trip computer. Now, some people say, fill it up to the very top of the filler neck. Well, that can damage your evap system, so I don't recommend that. I tend to stop filling up at the first click or the second click at a push. This isn't a scientific test. This is a rough guide, and it's a real world test. I find the lab test not that accurate either, because the claimed official economy of a car uses the lab test. Yet, it's much easier to achieve the claimed economy in some cars than it is in others, which tells me there's something wrong there. If it was accurate, it would be the same. Right, I've just finished the 70-mile-an-hour stretch now. I'll put on screen what the results are. Again, I don't know until I stop. I'm going to stop in here, like I did last time. Foxmead. And I'll see. I managed to do 70 miles an hour, probably about a third of the time in total. I'm going to have to go further up because I don't want to block the road. I normally stop there, but yeah, I'll have to stop here just a little bit further. And I got 67.2 miles per gallon, which I think is actually quite similar to last time. I'll put it on screen, although it doesn't really matter now because the temperature of the engine is warm. It's already up to temperature this time and last time. My speed on the country roads is going to be driving safely, but making the most of the speed limit when it's safe to do so. The country road route consists of 30, 40, 50 and 60 mile per hour limits, but I've been unfortunate. I was stuck behind a lorry. The lorry went a different way. Hooray, I can get up to speed. Now I'm stuck behind another lorry, and I've done, I think, around about half the route so far. So when I drive the hybrid, I'm going to drive it at a similar speed because it's going to be an unfair test otherwise. And most of the time, I've been topping out at about 40, maybe 45 miles per hour on the clear stretches of road. I've not been able to do 60, only very briefly. I'm no longer stuck behind a lorry, but that has only been the case for the last two stretches of 60 mile per hour road, and they're not particularly long ones. As a result, my fuel economy is very high, 68.8 miles per gallon, but that doesn't really represent what fuel economy I'd usually get in a car like this on these roads. So I have an idea. If I'm not stuck behind a lorry when I drive the hybrid, I'll drive it as I normally drive it. I won't try and replicate the drive I've done in this car, because I drove this car last week when traffic was good and I was able to maintain a high speed. So I already know what fuel economy this car gets on the exact same route. So I'll just compare the hybrid to last week's fuel economy instead of this week's, but I won't know until I do the drive in the hybrid and find out how busy it is. Hopefully it's not busy, because then you get to see, and I get to see, how economical that Toyota hybrid is when you're able to actually get going on an English country rural route. Okay, I've just finished the drive and it was 67.2 miles per gallon over 17 miles. That is too good for this car. I was usually doing in the 30s, and when I'm doing in the 30s in this car, 30 something miles per hour, it does get very good economy. Whether or not I use this figure will come down to how busy it is when I drive the hybrid, but I want to keep it fair. Okay, it's time for the hybrid. Everything's set up, trip computer reset. It's hot in here, so I can't wait to get going and get this air conditioning on. I'll start the engine and get going straight away. So on. Beep, no engine, into drive and start moving. The engine doesn't stay on all the time. It goes on and off as it needs to. At low speeds, it tends to stay off. One of the beauties of this full hybrid system is that it's able to keep the air conditioning running even when the engine is off. So if you're stuck in traffic for a long period of time, the engine doesn't need to be running for you to stay cool. And I have done 2 significant traffic jams in this so far, and it was able to keep the engine off for about 20 minutes. Although if it was a hotter day, then the engine probably would have had to come on sooner to charge the battery. The battery powers the air conditioning compressor. That's how you can have air conditioning even though the engine is off. Regardless of whether or not this car is more economical than the old diesel I was just driving, it's a significant upgrade. It's quieter, smoother, and it has electric response. So when you want to pull out and get going, you put your foot on the go pedal and it just goes. There's no delay, no waiting for an automatic transmission or a robotized manual to do the clutch for you. Of course, you could just get around those problems by just having a manual diesel, but this is still more relaxing. Also, the driver aids make driving easier. It will start and stop in traffic for you and adapt its speed to the car in front when you have the cruise control. And also, the lane trace assist, where it keeps me in my lane on the motorway, actually works in this car. This is Toyota's 3rd generation of that system. And it's the 5th generation of the hybrid system. See, I didn't stop there. The car stopped for me, press the plus, and then it gets going again. However, I won't be using those systems in town much because I'm much smoother than the systems are. But it does take some of the strain out of the long motorway drives. Of course, you could get those driver assistance systems in a modern diesel with the latest tech. But what you don't get is this level of refinement. There's no gear changes. There's no clutch. There's just 2 motors. One starts the engine and does most of the charging. The other does some of the charging and powers the wheels. And they're interlinked with a planetary gear set. Now, you don't need to know what any of that stuff means. What you do need to know is that it's incredibly smooth and often silent. There's no gear changes, therefore there's no gear changes to be felt, and the engine is always connected to the wheels. There's always power available. This car does have a continuously variable transmission, a CVT, but it's not the cone and band type that many people assume it has, which is a bad assumption because this transmission is very different to that. It allows the engine to run more or less completely independent of the wheels. It can spin at a different speed and produce a different level of power, whilst allowing the wheels to do the speed that you want them to. That's important because it allows the engine to run at its most efficient state more of the time. No idling, no low efficiency at low RPMs, without much load. When it's running efficiently, and also it can run the Atkinson cycle, which doesn't produce much power, but it's more efficient. It doesn't need to produce power though, because the electric motor is there to back it up. Just coming to the end now of the City Drive in the Corolla Hybrid. I'll put on screen the results and I'll compare them to the results I got in the Citroen. I don't know yet. It looks pretty good though, what it's saying at the moment, but I won't put that up. I'll put what it says once I've parked up. So I keep it the same for both cars, but you've got time to look at the figures. Probably not going to be able to park in the exact same space, but very close. Is there a space there? Oh yeah, actually, more or less exactly the same place. Couple of cars up. Let's pull over and have a look then. So what we have here then, 72.3 miles per gallon, 16 miles and 19 miles per hour average speed. Let's see how it is at 70. This car has the 140 PS system, or 138 brake horsepower, and it is quite punchy, especially up to 30 miles an hour. Now I'm accelerating at a moderate rate here because I did that in the other car, so I'm trying to keep it equal. But it does get up to 30 or 40 quickly, but once you're above 40, this car and that diesel are actually fairly similar. This is quicker, but not a huge amount quicker. Let's try and get 70 miles an hour and stay there as much as I can. It's where the cruise control can be helpful. Just set it to 70. It thinks the speed limit's 30 because it saw a 30 sign. Hopefully, it says here, look, that will change soon. That's the problem with the traffic sign recognition. It does see signs in other roads sometimes and gives you false information. You certainly can't rely on it. This is where I think the diesel is going to win. But I'm doing 70 miles an hour. That's not fair. I'm going to bring it down a bit. I wasn't doing 70 miles an hour along here in the diesel. I was doing not even 60 through most of this stretch. So I'm going to try and replicate the speed I did in that diesel to make it fair. I will do 70, but only where I was doing 70 in the diesel. It seems a lot more clear now. Not all hybrids are the same. It's important to understand that there are many different systems out there, and that when you see the word hybrid, that doesn't tell you much. Toyota's hybrid has been around for a long time, and it's a proven system that is reliable. The thing you want to worry about is the battery. If that goes wrong, it's going to cost a lot of money. But the battery in this car, well, Toyota have so much confidence in it that they give it a 15-year or 150,000 mile, whatever comes soonest, warranty. Now, if you look up the average age of a car that's scrapped on the internet, the SMMT says that's 13.5 years. So the warranty is longer than the average lifespan of a car in the UK. Albeit cars can of course last longer, that's just the average. About to leave the 70 mile an hour road, 52.2 miles per gallon so far, but I'm not done yet. I'm going to turn around and go back the other way like I did last time. This way seems mostly uphill, but the other way seems mostly downhill, and that's where this hybrid will probably take advantage of that hill and get better economy, as it will be in EV mode more. But I don't know, we will see. I'm trying to keep the speed similar to what I did last time. It's hard to try and remember, but I sort of remembered where I was able to do 70, where I was doing in the 50s when I was 60. I'm just trying to keep that the same. At the moment, the average speed is 53. And I can't remember what the average speed at the end of the last run was, but I think it was 57. Or I don't know, I'll put it on screen now. But that's pretty much what I'm aiming for. High 50s average speed, which is what I think I did last time. I'd love to sit at 70 miles an hour for a long stretch and see what it does at that speed. But the reality is you don't get to do that often in this country, at least not in this part of the country. It's just too busy. Typically on these roads you're between 60 and 70 most of the time. This car really is relaxing to drive. My other half's quite a nervous driver. She doesn't like driving much, and she gets me to drive pretty much everywhere if she can. But since she's had this, which has not been long to be fair, but she's not been really letting me drive it much. She's been wanting to drive, and I think it's partly because it's so easy. It makes it relaxing and it gives her more confidence. Well, I've only got 1.4 miles left and my average speed is 54, so I'm not quite at the 57 I was aiming for. I was hoping to do 70 on this stretch. I am now, but I wasn't earlier. I was trying to replicate what I did last time, but there was a bit more traffic here this time. So 54 at the moment. Hopefully it's 55 by the time I get off the road. 1 mile left. I'll get past this lorry and then I'll move back to lane 1. 57.4 miles per gallon so far. That's not as good as the diesel from memory. So just leaving the 70 mile an hour road. I have to slow down on the main road here because the slip road, well, as you can see, it's not really a slip road. And then brake a bit harder as I get off the road, or the main road. I'm still on a road. So I'll put the results on screen now for what I get when I actually stop the car. And I'll compare them to the diesel. My average speed is 50, it's just dropped to 53, it was 54. I'll put on screen the average speed and the diesel as well. I know I have it. Hopefully they are very similar. And just pull over here, same place as last time, and it's saying 58.6 miles per gallon. So that's the result that will be on screen. No, 58.7. I've stopped now. That is the end result, so that's what's going to be on screen. I can't actually remember. I think that's worse than the diesel. I think the diesel was 60 something. Anyway, you all know. And average speed of actually 52 miles an hour in the end. Bit low, really. I misjudged that a bit. Anyway, country roads. Before I got going on this road, I managed to have a look at my records from the last run in the Citroen, and apparently it was 53 miles an hour average on the 70 mile an hour road. So I did actually get it about the same. Although this said 52, that was after I had stopped. When I stopped, it said 53, but because I weren't moving, that was bringing the average down. It went 52, 51, 50 as I was sitting there. So I looked back on the camera and 53 was the average speed when I stopped. So that's what I'm going with. And the photograph I took of the trip computer when I'd finished the run in the Citroen was also 53. Now I'm on rural roads, 60 mile an hour. I can actually do 60 here. I'm going a lot faster than I was in the Citroen. So obviously I'm going to get much worse fuel economy, but that's easy. I'm just going to compare it with the run that I did in the Citroen when I didn't have traffic last week. This car certainly handles a lot better. It deals with the bumps better and it's more flat. It doesn't hit a bump and then become unsettled for a moment. It recovers quickly. The road is clearer this time. I am on my own at the moment, so I'm able to go as fast as I wish, similar to what I did in the Citroen last week. So hopefully the speed is going to be similar. I'm just going as fast as I can whilst being safe and within the limit. At the moment I'm on a 60, of course I'm not doing 60 because I have these bends, so I'm slowing down before the bend, and then when I can see far, I go faster. This car really does handle a lot better though. I know I've already mentioned it, but just feel it around that bend. It's so much more stable and planted. There we go, already close to 60 miles an hour. Barely noticed that at all. Didn't really hear anything, it just wafted up to speed. 67.2 miles per gallon, I wasn't expecting that. I think I have gone down a bit of a hill though. We'll see what that is at the end, because it shouldn't be that high doing close to 60 on these kinds of roads, surely. Not really properly tested this yet on these kinds of roads, so I don't really know. I'm amazed by the economy on these roads. 68 miles per gallon at the moment, and I'm speeding up and slowing down on this 60 road. I haven't had much traffic at all. There's only 160 left after this. I think motor generator 2, number 2, which accelerates the wheels and also recuperates the energy when you slow down and puts it back into the battery. That's doing a very good job, because even when I'm accelerating relatively briskly up to 60 miles an hour, I can barely hear the engine at all. It seems to be mostly, or most of the power seems to be coming from the motor, although it could just be very well insulated when it comes to sound. You can hear a slight whine from the engine just there, yeah, but mostly it's almost silent, just a little bit of road and wind noise, and then you're, before you know it, doing about 60 miles an hour. Got to slow down now, coming into the 30. What's it saying here? 65.9 miles per gallon. Okay, last bit of 60 coming up soon, and then the test is finished. Okay, just parking up after the country road test. Figures will be on screen now. I'm not sure what they are yet. When I stop, I'll have a look. So 68.9 miles per gallon, and that was a clear run. So I'm going to compare that to the run I did in the Citroen last week when I had a clear run, and I was going similar speed, making use of the speed limit as and when I felt it was safe to do so. Possibly I may have even been going slightly quicker in this car, because this car gives me a bit more confidence. It does handle better. Wow. So Toyota's 5th generation self-charging hybrid isn't just a gimmick. It does actually work. So on screen at the moment there should be the combined average, the combined mean average of all 3 trips for both cars. And for the Citroen, I'm going to include a 7% adjustment, because I know that trip computer lies. I've tested it many times using the fuel tank method, from full tank to empty back to full again, and it's usually lying by about 7% over. I've only done the fuel tank method once with this car. We've only had it for 1 full tank of fuel, and the trip computer seemed to be spot on. So I'm going to trust it for now, but as we have the car for longer, then, well, we'll find out if it really is truthful. So I don't know the figures. They're on screen, but I can't see them. I'm going to work them out during the edit, but I'm guessing overall this car was more economical, but the diesel was more economical at sustained speed, above 60 miles per hour. However, once you hit traffic, this will then become more economical than the diesel. A good example was Sunday, I drove this from Hastings to Colchester. Quite a long way, took me 3.5 hours, should only take 2 hours 15 minutes. 70 mile an hour roads, but 2 significant queues of traffic. And if I was in the Citroen and we didn't get that traffic, I'm pretty sure that would have used less fuel. But in this one, I still managed to get over 60 miles to the gallon. And if I was doing that journey in the Citroen with that traffic, it would not have got over 60 miles to the gallon. So it all depends on how you're driving. Generally speaking, this car is more economical, but if you are able to sustain high speed without getting yourself into traffic, then the diesel, well, an equivalent diesel to this car will still probably use less fuel. But apparently this car emits less harmful emissions for people in cities than the Euro 5 diesel. But does it? There was a Channel 4 documentary called Dispatches where they claimed hybrid vehicles emit more harmful emissions than diesel vehicles, but I can't find that documentary anymore. But I know it existed because I can find articles that talk about it. Whether or not they found out their claims were inaccurate and that's why they've taken it down, I don't know. Maybe what they did is that he looked at petrol hybrids and go, okay, they're the emissions. Oh, that one there. Diesels don't emit that one, and ignore the bigger picture, blow that little one out of proportion to make a documentary for views. I don't know. Or maybe it's a genuine concern and more people need to be talking about it. Again, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I haven't done the research. I don't even know the emissions they were talking about. I don't know what they are, what they do. I don't know who to believe. Well, if you found the video interesting, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy, and that takes away a big stress from the owner of that car. Using the links, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest, and you can change your car on that quote as many times you like without having to do the whole quote again to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. That's a useful tool. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.